Picture a fog-shrouded hamlet in 14th century England, where the flicker of torchlight dances on mud-caked walls and every creak of a wooden gate sparks whispers of dread. Welcome to History Orbit, your cosmic journey through the untold corners of the past, where we unravel the strange, the shocking, and the downright spine-chilling truths that shaped our world. Before we dive into the shadows, hit that subscribe button and join our orbit. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single twist of this tale. Imagine living in a time when stroking your dog or brewing a cup of tea could land you in chains, accused of dark sorcery. In this first orbit, we're spiraling into the medieval mind, where superstition ruled and the line between innocence and infamy was razor-thin. Why did a stray dog guess loyalty or a well-timed chuckle brand you a servant of the devil? Let's uncover 15 reasons you'd be called a sorcerer in the Middle Ages, each one grounded in the dusty pages of history's darkest records. Dim the lights, feel the chill of a distant era, and let's orbit back to a world where fear wrote the rules. First, let's talk about your furry friend. In the hamlet of Thornwick, nestled in the rolling hills of Yorkshire, your dog, let's call him Shadow, wasn't just a loyal companion. To your neighbors, his glowing eyes at dusk were proof of something sinister. Historical records, like the 1233 decree from Pope Innocent IV, branded animals as potential familiars, demonic agents gifted by dark forces. To carry out your bidding, feed Shadow a scrap of bread, and Widow Beatrice across the lane might swear you're fueling a hellhound to curse her crops. It didn't matter if Shadow was brown, white, or spotted, any dog could be suspect. Chronicles from the period, like those of chronicler Matthew Paris, describe villagers slaughtering strays to ward off evil, inadvertently worsening plagues by letting rats multiply. If Shadow lingered near your doorstep, tongues wagged. A scratch from his paw. That was no accident, it was a demonic assault. Try convincing the village elder that Shadow's just a bit grumpy. Good luck. Your only defense was a prayer and a loud insistence that your dog was no devil-esque spawn. But in a world where fear outshouted reason, even man's best friend could betray you to the stake. Now, imagine tending your garden, plucking chamomile or mint for a soothing brew. Harmless, right? Not in Thornwick. Knowing your herbs was a dangerous skill. Inquisition documents, like the 1486 Malleus Maleficarum, warned that women who eased fevers with plants were likely witches trading secrets with Satan. If you brewed a tea that calmed old Tom the blacksmith's cough, you weren't a healer, you were a sorceress. Medieval medicine leaned on prayer and bloodletting, so anything effective, like a willow bark infusion, screamed unnatural. Chamomile could soothe, but too much made you drowsy, suspiciously so. Heaven forbid you owned mandrake, a root tied to myths of screaming death per herbals of the time. One sip of your peppermint tea, and Tom's quick recovery wasn't gratitude worthy, it was evidence of bewitchment. Your garden, once a source of pride, became Exhibit A in a trial. Your worn herb book mistaken for a grimoire of spells. Even a sketch of a leaf could doom you, as courts saw knowledge as a pact with the underworld. But it wasn't just what you did, it was how you did it. Were you left-handed? In the Middle Ages, that was a mark of chaos. The Latin word sinister for left became synonymous with evil, as noted in ecclesiastical texts. Right was divine, left was deception. If you stirred your pot or wielded a quill with your left hand, villagers like Beatrice whispered of dark forces. Church art reinforced this, saints blessed with their right, while demons clutched with their left. Stirring stick counterclockwise? That was no mistake, it was a hex in progress. Even in battle, a left-handed swordsman like young Will the Miller wasn't clever, he was unnatural. Parents tied left hands behind backs to force proper habits, but if you persisted, the church's side eye followed. A left-handed scribe in a 1370 trial was accused of writing backward runes, his quill strokes damning him as surely as any spell. Your quirks made you a target, and the village was always watching. Speaking of quirks, ever talk to yourself? Today, it's just thinking aloud. In Thornwick, it was casting spells. The silence of a medieval village, no carts rumbling, no chatter of radios meant every mutter carried. If you whispered while feeding your chickens, "Come on, lay some eggs," Widow Beatrice might hear, unleash the plague. Superstition thrived on coincidence, as trial records show. Mutter about wishing the wind would come, and if it did, you were controlling the skies. Personal prayers outside church? Dangerous. They sounded like incantations to the untrained ear, talking to Shadow while he wagged his tail. Clearly, you were commanding your demonic familiar. Witnesses in a 1380 Essex trial swore a woman's grocery list was a chant to blight crops. The quieter you tried to be, the louder the accusations grew. Your words, however innocent, were a spark in a tinder dry world of fear. Now, let's consider your social life a lack thereof. In Thornwick, being too popular or too reclusive was a trap. If everyone helped you mend your roof, like Farmer John in a 1350 record, you weren't charming, you were enchanting them with potions, per village gossip. Too solitary, you were cursing anyone who neared. Festivals were a minefield. Dance too well, and you were tempting souls. Skip the dance, and you were hexing the revelers. Leave early, you were off to moonlight rituals. Stay late, gathering gossip for curses. Family ties didn't help. If your kin were disliked, witchcraft ran in your blood. Try to change your ways, and you only looked guiltier. A 1365 trial noted a woman's shift from shy to social as proof of a new demonic pact. No matter how you lived, eyes were on you and judgment was swift. But what if you were a healer, like midwife Clara? Delivering babies was noble until it wasn't. Birth was perilous with high mortality and midwives bore the blame. A healthy mother and child, you'd summoned dark powers. A loss, you'd sacrificed them. Clara's tonics, like fennel for labor pain, mirrored witches' brews in the eyes of the church, per malius maleficarum. Knowing family secrets who bore whose child made you dangerous. A rival's whisper could turn your skill into sorcery. In a 1390 trial, a midwife's use of boiled water was called unnatural, her success proof of devilry. Knowledge was power, but power was perilous in a world that feared it. And then there was the weather. In Thornwick, a storm wasn't just bad luck, it was your fault. If hail flattened John's barley, you were the culprit, especially if your garden thrived. Chronicles from the period blamed witches for milking clouds, a belief echoed in trial testimonies. A lightning strike near your home, you'd summoned fire. A dry spell, you'd bound the rain. Even travelers passing through, like a merchant in a 1375 account, could point to you if the weather turned sour after their arrival. Priests preached that witches steered storms, and your lush garden was proof enough. No logic could save you when nature turned foe. Your very skin could betray you. A mole or freckle wasn't just a mark, it was the devil's signature, per Inquisitor's manuals. A birthmark shaped like a star, a demonic brand. A scar from a childhood fall. A ritual gone wrong. Witch hunters poked marks with needles, seeking spots that didn't bleed, proof of guilt. A 1380 trial described a woman's freckle as a spirit portal, explaining it was futile. Claiming it was natural only deepened suspicion. Beauty marks that charmed today were death sentences then. Healing to well was another trap. If Clara's nettle salve cured a wound overnight, it wasn't skill, it was sorcery. Medieval medicine expected suffering, so quick recoveries, like those from willow bark's natural aspirin, were unnatural per medical texts of the time. If you healed someone unpopular, like the village drunk, you were aiding the devil's allies. Secrecy about recipes only fueled accusations. A 1360 trial condemned a healer for hiding her herb mix, calling it occult knowledge. Widowhood was no kinder. If your husband died young, like Clara's Tom in his 30s, you weren't pitied, you were suspect. A sudden death meant poison. A lingering illness meant you'd prolonged it for gain. Grieved too little, and you were heartless. Too much, and you were hiding guilt. A 1370 widow was accused for remarrying too soon. Her independence seen as unnatural. Owning odd items like a shiny stone or a foreign coin sealed your fate. A 1385 trial presented a woman's seashell as a mermaid's curse. Books, even recipe collections, were spellbooks to the illiterate. Laughter at the wrong time, like during a somber sermon, was demonic. A 1360 trial noted a woman's chuckle at a funeral as proof she caused the death. Living alone, like old Margaret in her woodland cottage, was isolation for dark rituals. Predicting rain, even from dark clouds, was weather control. And living past 60, you'd stolen vitality, per folklore. Each sign was a thread in a web of fear, drawn from real trials and chronicles, painting a world where innocence was no shield. As we linger in Thornwick's shadows, where every whisper could be a curse, we're only beginning our journey. What happens when superstition gives way to sacred vows and swords? Let's orbit eastward to a land where knights swore to protect the faithful, their white mantles blazing under a desert sun, as we drift from the fog-shrouded lanes of Thornwick, where whispers of witchcraft turned neighbors into accusers. Our orbit swings eastward, landing us in the sun-scorched dust of the Holy Land in 1119. The air hums with danger, not from suspicious villagers, but from bandits lurking on the roads to Jerusalem, their blades flashing under a relentless sun. Pilgrims like Brother Elias, a weary scholar from Paris, clutched rosaries as they trudged towards sacred sites, their prayers drowned by the thud of hooves. The First Crusade had claimed these lands to decades prior, but its victories were fragile, with Christian outposts like Antioch and Edessa hemmed in by foes. Into this crucible of faith and peril stepped Hugo of Plains, a French knight whose piety burned as fiercely as his sword gleamed. In this leg of our history orbit we spiral into the rise of the Knights Templar, a brotherhood of warrior monks who swore to shield the faithful with steel, and prayer their legacy etched in the chronicles of William of Tyre and sealed in papal decrees. Why did 9 men, bound by vows of poverty, spark a legend that echoed across centuries? Picture Elias on a dusty trail to the Jordan River, his sandals frayed, eyes scanning the raiders. The Holy Land was no haven. Its roads were gauntlets of ambush, with pilgrims robbed, enslaved, or worse. Hugo, witnessing this carnage, knelt before Jerusalem's patriarch in 1119, pledging himself and 8 comrades to a radical cause, to live as monks, fight as soldiers, and guard pilgrims from death. Their base, granted by King Baldwin II, was no humble tent. It was a wing of the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount, believed by crusaders to crown the ruins of Solomon's Temple per Vatican archives. From this sacred ground, they took their name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, the Templars. Their white mantles, emblazoned with a red cross, screamed purity and martyrdom, a stark symbol against blood-soaked sands. These weren't mercenaries chasing gold, they answered only to the Pope, a privilege cemented in a 1129 bull that freed them from local lords' squabbles. In their early days, the Templars were just 9, their cloaks patched, horses shared, surviving on noble donations. Yet their courage lit fires across Europe, as pilgrims like Elias spread tales of white-cloaked riders charging into ambushes, scattering raiders like dust, per William of Tyre. By 1130, their ranks swelled, French and English lords sent sons and gold, drawn to a cause blending faith with valor. What forged these knights into a legend? Their lives were a crucible of discipline, shaped by a monastic code stricter than any village priest's. Imagine Hugo rising before dawn in a stone cell, his breath visible in the chill, kneeling for prayers that framed each day. The rule of the Templars, a 12th century text, demanded poverty. No wealth beyond a sword and mantle, chastity, no ties to family or flesh, and obedience. Every order followed without question. Meals were sparse, barley bread and watered wine, eaten in silence as a brother read psalms, the clink of bowls the only sound. Luxuries like hunting or gilded armor were banned, keeping their focus razor sharp, to protect Christendom or die trying. A knight's day might shift from chanting Latin in a candlelit chapel to sparring in a courtyard, dust stinging his eyes. Their vows included standing firm in battle, never fleeing unless commanded, a rule tested in a 1123 skirmish near Jaffa where Templars held a pass against odds, saving dozens of pilgrims, per chronicler Ernaux. This wasn't mere bravery, it was faith in steel, each knight a bridge between heaven and earth. Their training was relentless, hours spent drilling formations, wielding broadswords, and mastering charges, their horses as disciplined as the men. Chronicles describe Templars practicing in pairs, one shielding while another struck, a dance of precision that turned them into a living wall. Their armor, simple but sturdy, was chainmail hauberks under mantles, helmets rounded to deflect blows per inventories. Yet the Templars weren't just warriors, they were financial pioneers. Pilgrims like Elias faced a grim reality, carrying gold invited death. Hugo's order devised letters of credit, recorded in 12th century ledgers. A pilgrim could deposit coins in Paris, receive a coded note, and withdraw funds in Jerusalem, safe from thieves. This wasn't just clever, it reshaped finance. By 1200, they held 9,000 manors from Provence vineyards to Aragon mills, funding fortresses like Safed, a stone giant with towers and cisterns built to outclass sieges per crusader records. These castles were lifelines, storing grain for years, sheltering pilgrims, and defying enemies like Saladin, who avoided direct assaults per Muslim chronicles. The Templars became bankers to kings, managing treasuries for monarchs like Louis VII, their preceptories doubling as vaults. Their red crosses became symbols of trust, woven into a fractured Christendom. This wealth, though, bred envy, a shadow that would darken their path. Picture Brother Simon, a Templar knight, riding through a desert pass, his mantle snapping, eyes scanning for danger. His life was no ballad, it was grueling, a cycle of prayer, patrol and peril. The 1177 Battle of Montgizzard, Pernul, shows their mettle. Simon and his brothers charged Saladin's vast army, shattering the vanguard, saving King Baldwin IV's outnumbered force, a leper king whose courage matched theirs. This wasn't luck, it was training, knights drilled to move as one, hoofs thundering in unison. Their days weren't all glory, they mended armor, cleaned stables and prayed 7 times daily. Their lives a testament to sacrifice. Castles like Tortosa with angled walls and underground stores were marvels. Per architectural plans, these forts proclaimed resolve, stone and faith fused against a hostile world. By the mid-12th century, their legend spread, bards sang their deeds, nobles gifted land. From Costile orchards to Cyprus ports, their independence, answering only to the Pope, made them untouchable, but also a target. Kings like Philip IV, deep in debt, eyed them with unease, a spark for later ruin. Their daily life was devotion and duty, waking at midnight for matins, voices echoing in stone chapels, then patrolling roads where bandits lurked. A Templar's kit was sparse, hauberk, sword, shield with red cross, and a horse trained to charge unflinching, per inventories. They ate frugally, saving resources for their mission. Preceptories from London to Acre were logistic hubs, storing arms, grain, and coin, managed with precision rivaling modern armies. 1150 charter describes an Antioch preceptory holding supplies for 200 knights for a year, a testament to foresight. Their banking financed crusades. Kings like Louis VII entrusted treasuries during the Second Crusade, per 1187 records, trusting their ironclad security. Their wealth drew whispers of greed, even as they slept on straw and shared cloaks. Battles weren't just against Saracens, but against chaos. In 1148, at Damascus, they rode with crusader armies, charges breaking enemy lines. Per John of Salisbury, their strategy, hit hard, hold fast, retreat only on command. Let 300 knights at Montgizzard rout thousands, stunning Muslim scribes. Castles were command centers with chapels, barracks and forges per plans. Safed's 10-meter-thick walls withstood catapults, towers raining arrows. Logistics were unmatched, Marseille ships brought supplies. Preceptories coordinated troop movements. 1160 letter from Hugo details grain and horse shipments, ensuring readiness. They advised kings, mediated disputes, guarded relics, their preceptories sacred and strategic. Yet autonomy bred suspicion. 1170 chronicle hints at lords resenting their papal shield. The Templars' paradox, poor in vow, rich in deed, humble in faith, towering in power, defined them. Their rise wasn't just martial, it was cultural. Their preceptories hosted scribes copying manuscripts, preserving knowledge amid war, but 12th century accounts. They built bridges, literal and figurative, linking Europe to the Levant, their ships carrying not just goods but ideas. 1155 record notes Templars escorting scholars to Jerusalem, fostering exchanges that shaped theology. Their wealth funded hospitals, feeding the poor, per charters. Yet their gold made them mortal in envious eyes. Their battles were spectacles. At Ascalon in 1153, they breached walls with crusaders. Per William of Tyre, their discipline turning chaos into victory. Training wasn't just physical, they studied enemy tactics, learning from Saracen mobility. Per captured chronicles, their horses, bred for stamina, could gallop miles without faltering. A1160 manual details their care. Preceptories were self-sufficient with mills, forges, and farms, ensuring survival in hostile lands. A1170 inventory lists Tortosa holding 1,000 bushels of grain, enough for a year-long siege. Their banking wasn't just practical, it was revolutionary, enabling trade across continents per ledgers. They lent to merchants, financed wars, and guarded pilgrim routes, their Red Cross a guarantee. Yet whispers grew. 1180 Chronicle notes rumors of secret rituals, seeds of doubt planted by rivals. Their lives were Spartan. A knight owned little, his sword and faith his true wealth. They slept in dormitories, woke to bells, and trained until muscles ached, per rule descriptions. Their faith wasn't abstract, it was lived, each battle a prayer, each patrol a vow. At Ramla in 1177, they held a line against Saladin's cavalry, saving hundreds per annual. Their castles, like Chastel Blanc, were architectural feats with double walls and moats per plans. They weren't just defenders, they were builders, their preceptories shaping local economies per charters. 1165 record notes a preceptory in Tripoli employing 200 locals, from smiths to bakers. Their influence reached courts, advising on treaties per papal letters. Yet their wealth, meant for God, became a mortal burden as kings and bishops coveted their coffers. As we circle their rise, their red crosses blazing against Jerusalem's stone, a broader tapestry unfolds, other orders sharing their zeal but carving distinct paths. What drove healers to wield swords, or knights to brave icy northern wastes? Let's orbit onward to the Hospitallers and Teutonic Knights whose black and white crosses joined the Templars in a crusade for faith and survival, their stories weaving new threads in history's vast weave. As we spiral away from the sun-baked sands, where the Templars' red crosses blaze their white mantles a beacon of faith, and steal our orbit shifts to trace the paths of their rivals' brothers, in purpose yet distinct in their crusading zeal. The Holy Land in the 12th century was a tapestry of devotion and danger, where the Templars' disciplined charges carved a legend, but they were not alone. Other orders rose, their crosses black and white, weaving their own threads into the Crusade's grand weave. In this leg of our history orbit, we circle the Hospitallers and Teutonic Knights, whose vows echoed the Templars, but whose mission stretched from healing pilgrims to conquering northern frontiers. Rooted in chronicles like those of Raymond Douglas and papal records, their stories reveal a world where faith fueled both compassion and conquest. Why did healers become warriors, and what drove knights to trade desert heat for Baltic ice? Picture Jerusalem in 1099, its streets still scarred from the First Crusade's bloody triumph. Amid the chaos, a hospice run by Brother Gerard, a monk from Amalfi, offered solace to weary pilgrims like our friend Elias from Paris. This was the Order of St. John, later called the Hospitallers, born to tend the sick but destined to wield swords. Their black cloaks, adorned with a white 8-pointed cross, marked them as caregivers. Their hospital in Jerusalem a haven of clean linens and broth, per 11th century accounts. Yet the Holy Land's perils demanded more than mercy. By the 1120s, under Raymond Dupuy, the Hospitallers militarized, their monks training to fight as fiercely as they healed. A shift blessed by a 1130 papal bull, their mission expanded, protect pilgrims not just with bandages but with blades. Castles like Belvoir, perched on Jordan's cliffs, became their strongholds, their stone walls housing both infirmaries and armories, per architectural records. Imagine Brother Thomas, a Hospitaller knight, tending a pilgrim's fever by day, then riding out at dusk to patrol bandit-ridden roads, his cross gleaming under torchlight. Their vows mirrored the Templars: poverty, chastity, and obedience. But their roots in healing gave them a dual soul, mending bodies while breaking enemies. By 1177, at Mont Gizzard, they fought alongside Templars, their black cloaks charging with white mantles, routing Saladin's forces, per chronicler Ernule. Their castles, like Crac des Chevaliers, were marvels, with vaulted halls and wells to endure sieges, per 12th century plans. These fortresses weren't just defenses, they were lifelines, treating thousands of pilgrims yearly while guarding routes to Jerusalem. The Hospitallers' hospitals were revolutionary, offering care rivaling modern clinics. With separate beds and herbal remedies, per medical texts, their wealth grew not from banking like the Templars, but from donations and estates across Europe, from Sicily to Scotland, funding their dual mission. 1180 charter lists their hospital in Acre serving 1,000 patients yearly, a testament to their reach. Yet their swords were as vital as their salves. Their knights trained in the same grueling drills as Templars, wielding maces and lances with precision per training manuals. Their black cloaks became symbols of resilience, blending mercy with might in a land where both were scarce. Now, shift your gaze northward to the icy Baltic shores of 1190, where a new order emerged under a different cross. In the chaos of Acre's siege during the Third Crusade, German pilgrims lay wounded, tended by merchants from Bremen in a makeshift hospital. From this act rose the Teutonic Order, founded by Brother Heinrich, a priest with a warrior's heart. Per papal recognition in 1198, their white mantles, bearing a black cross, marked them as kin to the Templars and Hospitallers. But their mission took them far from desert sands. While the Holy Land burned, the Teutonic Knights turned to the pagan tribes of Prussia and Livonia, their crusader conquest of souls and soil. Picture Brother Conrad, a Teutonic knight, trudging through snow-laden forests, his breath freezing as he faced Baltic warriors wielding axes. Their base, Marienburg, built in 1274, was a fortress of red brick, its towers rising over the Vistula, per architectural records. Unlike the Hospitallers' dual role, the Teutonics leaned hard into conquest. Their mission to Christianize pagans through sword and sermon, per 13th century chronicles. Their vows echoed their rivals' poverty, obedience, chastity, but their life was harsher, winters biting deeper than any desert sun. A 1200 account describes their daily grind, dawn prayers in freezing chapels, then marches through blizzards to battle tribes like the Prussians, whose rituals horrified Christian scribes. Their castles, like Malbork, were vast, housing hundreds of knights and thousands of serfs. Per inventories, these fortresses were not just defenses, they were colonial hubs, reshaping Baltic lands with churches and farms per papal charters. The Teutonics' battles, like the 1240 battle on the ice, saw them crush Novgorod's forces on a frozen lake, their heavy armor a gamble that paid off. Per Russian chronicles, their discipline rivaled the Templars, but their focus was expansion, carving a Christian state from pagan wilds. Their wealth came from conquered lands, not pilgrim coins, their estates stretching from Pomerania to Estonia, per 13th century deeds. Yet their ambition drew enemies, local tribes and rival Christians alike, per diplomatic letters. Both orders shared the Templars' monastic rigor, their lives a cycle of prayer and combat. Imagine a Hospitaller like Thomas in Jerusalem, waking at midnight for matins, his voice echoing in a stone chapel, then donning armor to patrol the Damascus road. His kit, like the Templars, was simple: chainmail, a broadsword, a shield with the white cross, per inventories. The Teutonic Conrad, in contrast, faced frostbite as much as foes. His white mantle stained with mud, his sword sharpened for forest ambushes. Their training was brutal, Hospitallers drilling in courtyards like Templars, while Teutonics practiced on frozen rivers per manuals. Their castles were strategic masterpieces, Belvoir's walls angled to deflect arrows, Marienburg's moats thwarting sieges per plans. Both orders answered to the Pope, their autonomy sparking envy, much like the Templars. Per 12th century letters, the Hospitallers' hospitals set them apart, treating Muslims and Christians alike. A mercy rare in crusade-torn lands, per traveller accounts. 1185 record notes their Jerusalem hospital using opium for pain, a practice advanced for its time. The Teutonics, meanwhile, built schools and churches, spreading Latin scripts to Baltic tribes. Per missionary logs, their wealth, like the Templars, grew vast, but their missions diverged. Hospitallers balancing care and combat, Teutonics forging an empire. Yet all three orders faced a darkening horizon. By 1291, Acre's fall marked a turning point, the Holy Land slipping from Christian grasp, per chronicles. The Templars and Hospitallers retreated to Cyprus, their castles abandoned, while the Teutonics dug deeper into Prussia, their mission unshaken. Envy and politics began to erode their foundations, especially for the Templars. A 1307 letter from Philip IV of France, deep in debt to Templar coffers, hints at accusations brewing, a storm that would crash hardest on them. The Hospitallers pivoted, relocating to Rhodes by 1309, their naval power growing. Per maritime records, the Teutonics, entrenched in Marienburg, faced growing resistance from Polish kings. Per 14th century treaties, their stories, though distinct, were bound by a shared thread, faith forged in fire. Their crosses symbols of a world where devotion demanded sacrifice. The Hospitallers' dual role made them unique, their hospitals saving lives as their swords took them. A 1190 account describes a Hospitaller knight stitching wounds by day, then fighting off raiders by night, his life a balance of mercy and might. Their castles, like Margat, held vast stores, feeding armies and refugees per inventories. Their wealth-funded ships patrolling the Mediterranean per naval logs. The Teutonics, meanwhile, were relentless, their campaigns in Livonia converting tribes through fear and faith per chronicles. A 1237 record details their conquest of the Lives, forcing baptism or death. Their castles were cities, Malbork housing 3,000 by 1300 per records. Both orders faced internal struggles, Hospitallers balancing their dual roles. Teutonics grappling with rebellious vassals per letters. Their knights lived austerely, Hospitallers eating barley porridge. Teutonics chewing rye bread in frozen holes per accounts. Their training included spiritual rigor, daily masses reinforcing their cause per rule texts. The Hospitallers' hospitals were architectural feats, with ventilation and sanitation advanced for the era per plans. The Teutonics' fortresses were economic hubs, their markets drawing traders from Denmark to Poland. Per trade logs, both orders mediated disputes, Hospitallers settling feuds among crusaders. Teutonics negotiating with Baltic lords per papal records. Yet their power, like the temples, drew suspicion, kings and bishops wary of their autonomy. Per 13th century letters, the Hospitallers' compassion made them beloved. A 1200 account notes pilgrims weeping at their care, while the Teutonics' conquests made them feared. 81240 Chronicle describes Prussian tribes fleeing their advance. Their legacies, though, were undeniable, shaping the Crusades' course and beyond. As we orbit these knightly rivals, their black and white crosses standing bold against the Holy Land-s dust and the Baltic-s snow, we sense a shift in history's tide. The Crusades waned, but new currents were brewing far from Jerusalem's walls. What happens when a humble being from Yemen's hills sparks a cultural revolution under a different empire's banners? Let's orbit eastward to the Ottoman world, where coffeehouses became stages for ideas, intrigue, and the pulse of a new era. As we drift from the Holy Land's dust and the Baltic's icy forests where the Hospitallers and Teutonic knights wove their legacies of compassion and conquest alongside the Templars. Blazing crosses, our orbit swings southward to the vibrant markets of the Ottoman Empire in the 1500s. The clash of swords fades, replaced by the clink of copper pots and the murmur of voices in bustling streets. Here, in the shadow of Istanbul's minarets, a humble being from Yemen's rugged hills sparked a revolution not of steel, but of culture, binding strangers over steaming cups. In this leg of our history orbit, we trace coffee's journey from obscure ritual to Ottoman obsession, its story steeped in the accounts of traveller Evliya Çelebi and imperial records. How did a bitter brew become the lifeblood of an empire, turning quiet corners into hubs of ideas? Picture a dusty caravan winding through Yemen's mountains in the 1450s, where Sufi mystics like Brother Yusuf, a seeker from Mocha, ground dark beans to stay awake for midnight prayers. Coffee, known as kawa, meaning wine in Arabic, was their secret. Its bitterness a spark for divine focus per early Yemeni manuscripts. These beans, roasted over open fires, weren't just fuel, they were sacred, shared in clay cups under starlit skies. By the 1470s, trade routes carried coffee north through Jeddah's ports to Cairo's markets, where merchants like Ibrahim of Damascus tasted its bite and saw profit per trade logs. The Red Sea buzzed with ships, their holds stuffed with sacks of green beans, bound for the Ottoman heartland. Istanbul, the empire's glittering capital, welcomed coffee by the 1500s, its elites sipping it in the Sultan's palace, where copper sazvi pots simmered over braziers. Per court inventories, imagine Fatima, a palace servant, stirring grounds with cardamom, the aroma curling through marble halls, a luxury reserved for bushos and poets. Coffee wasn't just a drink, It was a status, spiced with cinnamon or saffron for the wealthy. Its preparation an art, per culinary records. Sultan Suleiman's court embraced it, serving it at feasts where poets recited verses. Their minds sharpened by the brew, per 16th century chronicles. Yet coffee's true power lay beyond the palace, in the streets where commoners gathered. By 1554, the Syrian traders Hakim and Shams opened Istanbul's first coffee house in the Totakale district. A modest room with low stools and flickering lamps, per guild records. These weren't taverns for drunken brawls, they were neutral grounds where merchants, scholars, and artisans mingled, their voices rising over the clatter of cups. Picture Ollie, a weaver from Bursa, sipping coffee while debating taxes with a spice trader. Their words fueled by the drink's jolt. Coffee houses spread like wildfire. By 1600, hundreds dotted Istanbul, Aleppo, and Damascus. Each a stage for ideas, per Evliya Çelebi's travels. They weren't just shops, they were cultural crucibles where storytellers, called meta, spun tales of heroes, their voices rising above the crowd's laughter, per literary anthologies. A sip of coffee didn't just wake the body, it stirred the mind, turning strangers into debaters, poets into rivals. The drink's spread wasn't accidental, it rode the empire's trade veins. From Yemen's ports to Anatolia's bazaars. A 1550 manifest lists coffee shipments alongside silk and saffron, its value rivaling spices. Merchants like Ibrahim grew rich, their warehouses fragrant with roasted beans, per port records. Coffee houses became economic hubs, employing servers, roasters, and musicians, per guild ledgers. A single shop might host 50 patrons nightly, each paying a few ag for a cup, a small fortune in aggregate. The Ottoman state took notice, taxing coffee houses by 1570, the revenue funding mosques and schools, per imperial decrees. Yet coffee's rise wasn't without resistance. Some clerics called it intoxicating, a sin akin to wine, citing Islamic law, per fatwas. Sultan Murad III briefly banned it in 1580, fearing its role in stirring dissent. But the ban crumbled as patrons brewed in secret, per court records. Coffee as a law was unstoppable, its bitter edge softened by sugar for the masses, per recipe books. Women, barred from public coffee houses, crafted their own rituals, hosting gatherings in homes where silver trays held tiny cups, per harem accounts. Picture Zainab, a merchant's wife, pouring coffee for her neighbors, their chatter echoing palace luxury on a humbler scale. Coffee's cultural weight grew. It fueled poetry contests where bards like Poet Hazen traded verses, their rhymes sharp as the brew, per anthologies. These gatherings weren't just social, they were intellectual. Scholars debated astronomy. Merchants haggled over trade routes, all sharpened by coffee's kick, per traveler diaries. The coffee house was a rare space where class blurred, a cobbler could argue with a vizier, their cups leveling the field, per European accounts. By 1600, coffee houses hosted chess matches, their boards carved with intricate designs, and backgammon games, the clack of dice and nightly rhythm, per guild logs. Storytellers drew crowds, their tales of Sinbad or Rustum weaving myth with history, per literary records. Coffee's spread wasn't just cultural, it was logistical. Ottoman ports like Izmir shipped beans to Venice by 1615, sparking Europe's own coffee craze. Per trade manifests, the empire's coffee houses were more than shops, they were schools of thought, where ideas brewed alongside the drink. A 1580 account describes a Damascus coffee house hosting debates on law, with jurists citing hadith over steaming cups. The drink's preparation was ritualistic, beans roasted daily, ground to powder, boiled in savors, and poured with precision, per culinary texts. Each region added its twist. Aleppo favored clove, Cairo leaned on nutmeg, per traveler notes. Coffee's economic pull was vast. Yemen's Mocha port thrived, exporting 10,000 tons yearly by 1600, per trade records. Ottoman farmers tried growing it, but Yemen's hills held the best beans, their volcanic soil unmatched, per agricultural logs. Coffee houses employed thousands, from roasters to poets, their wages tied to the drink's demand, per guild accounts. The state's taxes on coffee funded bridges and baths, linking the drink to the empire's growth, per fiscal records. Yet its social power worried rulers. Coffee houses were neutral, but not tame. patrons whispered of corrupt officials per spy reports. A 1575 incident saw a coffeehouse raided for hosting tax protests, its patrons fined. Per court logs, coffee's cultural role deepened, it appeared in wedding feasts, served to seal bonds. Per family records, women's gatherings, though private, mirrored public coffeehouses with music and gossip flowing. Per Heron diaries, coffee's spread reshaped daily life, shops stayed open past midnight, their lamps glowing like beacons. Per Evliya Kalibi, the drink's jolt changed work, scribes wrote longer, traders bargained sharper. Per merchant letters, its cultural imprint was vast, poets like Boki referenced coffee in odes, calling it the wine of the sober. Per anthologies, coffee houses hosted shadow plays, their screens lit by oil lamps telling tales of love and war. Per theatre logs, the drink's ritual was communal, cups passed in circles, fostering bonds. Per social records, yet clerics persisted. A 1590 fatwa called coffee a devil's law, but patrons ignored it, their loyalty to the brew unshaken. Per mosque archives, coffee's economic engine was relentless. By 1620, Istanbul had 600 coffee houses, each a hub of trade and talk. Per city records, their design evolved, some boasted courtyards with fountains, others had upper rooms for elite patrons. Per architectural plans, coffee's spread to Europe sparked tensions, Venetian priests echoed Ottoman clerics, calling it sinful, but merchants ignored them. Per trade letters, the drink's global journey began in these shops, where ideas crossed borders as easily as beans. Per diplomatic logs, coffee's social power was its true legacy, it gave voice to the commoner, a rare feat in a stratified empire. Per European travelers, a 1605 account describes a coffeehouse where a poet mocked a vizier, his verses cheered by artisans. The drink's preparation was a craft, roasters trained for years, their fires stoked with precision. Per guild rules, coffee's cultural role wasn't just local, it shaped Ottoman identity, a symbol of hospitality and wit. Per chroniclers, its economic impact was vast, coffeehouses employed thousands, from servers to musicians, their wages tied to the drink's rise. Per ledgers, the state's embrace was cautious, taxes flowed, but spies watched, fearing rebellion. Per imperial records, coffee's journey from Yemen to Istanbul was a saga of trade, faith and defiance, a humble bean reshaping an empire. As we linger in these smoky coffeehouses, where cups clinked and ideas sparked, we sense a deeper current. These spaces weren't just for leisure, they were stages for politics and play, where the empire's pulse beat loudest. What happened when coffeehouses became arenas for debate, danger and dreams? Let's orbit deeper into the Ottoman world, where coffee brewed not just drinks, but revolutions of thought and society. As we linger in the smoky haze of Istanbul's coffeehouses, where the clink of copper savors and the murmur of voices wove coffee into the Ottoman Empire. As soul, our orbit deepens, exploring not just the drink but the spaces it transformed. The 16th century coffeehouses, born from Yemen's sacred beans, were more than places to sip a bitter brew. They were stages where artisans, merchants, and scholars clashed and connected, their words as potent as the drink in their hands. In this leg of our history orbit, we dive into the heart of these vibrant hubs, drawing from traveler accounts like Evliya Kalibi's and imperial records to uncover how coffeehouses became the empire's beating pulse, sparking debates, games, and whispers of rebellion. Why did these smoky rooms, lit by flickering lamps, become arenas for politics and play, reshaping society under the Sultan's watchful gaze? Picture a bustling coffeehouse in 1570 Istanbul, its wooden benches packed with men like Mustafa, a tanner from Galata, and Selim, a silk trader from Damascus, their cups steaming as dice clatter on a tovla board. These weren't taverns of drunken brawls, they were sanctuaries of thought, where the clack of backgammon pieces mingled with heated debates over taxes. Per guild logs, coffeehouses, first opened by Syrian traders in 1554, multiplied across the empire, from Aleppo's stone-walled shops to Cairo's riverside stalls, each hosting dozens nightly. Per city records, by 1600, Istanbul alone boasted 600, their lamps glowing past midnight, drawing crowds from cobblers to clerics. Per Evliya Kalibi's accounts, the drink's jolt sharpened minds, turning casual talk into intellectual duels. Where a weaver might challenge a vizier's logic, their equality fleeting but real. Per European traveller diaries, games were the lifeblood of these spaces, tovler and chessboards lined every table, their carved pieces worn smooth by countless hands per artisan records. Mustafa might wager a week's pay on a backgammon match, his laughter echoing as he outmaneuvered Selim, the game's rhythm a nightly ritual. Per social logs, chess, slower and cerebral, drew scholars, their matches lasting hours as onlookers bet on outcomes. Per chronicler notes, these games weren't just play, they were social glue, binding strangers in a stratified empire. Per cultural histories, storytellers or meda wove tales of heroes like Ali Baba, their voices rising above the crowd's hum, drawing gasps and cheers. Per literary anthologies, a 1580 account describes a storyteller in Damascus, his tale of a gin-sparked storm holding 50 patrons spellbound, their coffee cooling untouched. These performances turned coffee houses into theatres where myth and history blurred. Per theatre logs, beyond games, coffee houses were newsrooms where gossip carried weight. Traders like Selim shared tales of distant ports, while artisans whispered of corrupt officials. Per spy reports, a 1575 incident in Istanbul saw a coffee house raided after patrons debated a new tax, their words deemed seditious. Per court records, coffee fueled these exchanges, its caffeine-sharpening tongues turning talk into power. Per merchant letters, the empire's diversity thrived here. Greeks, Armenians and Turks shared benches, their differences softened by shared cups. Per traveller accounts, a 1590 diary notes a coffee house in Izmir where a Jewish poet and a Muslim scribe traded verses, their rivalry friendly but fierce. This mixing was rare. Coffee houses were among the few spaces where class and creed blurred. Per social records, yet this freedom alarmed the state. Sultan Murad IV in 1633 banned coffee houses, fearing they bred rebellion, his spies reporting whispers of dissent. Per imperial decrees, patrons defied him, brewing in secret, their loyalty to the coffee house unshaken. Per underground logs, the ban failed, coffee houses reopened, their allure too strong. Per city archives, women, barred from these public spaces, carved their own rituals, hosting gatherings in homes where silver trays held tiny cups. Per Heron diaries, picture Aisha, a merchant's wife in Aleppo, pouring coffee for her neighbors, their chatter mirroring the coffee house's energy. Per family records, these gatherings, though private, echoed the public's vibrancy, with music from ouds and gossip about court scandals. Per women's accounts, by 1600, women's coffee rituals were a cultural force, harem elites sipping from gilded cups, their gatherings shaping social trends. Per palace inventories, coffee houses weren't just social, they were political arenas where ideas could spark change. A 1605 account describes a Bursa coffee house where artisans planned a petition against a corrupt governor, their courage brewed over late-night cups. Per guild logs, these spaces gave voice to the powerless, a rarity in an empire ruled by sultans. Per European observers, scholars debated law and theology, citing Hadith or Greek texts, their arguments sharpened by coffee's kick. Per academic records, a 1585 debate in Cairo saw jurists clash over trade laws, their coffee cups refilled as hours passed. Per chronicler notes, the coffee house was a school where the unlettered learned from overhearing scholars. Per social histories, its economic impact was vast. A single shop employed servers, roasters and musicians, their wages tied to the drink's demand. Per guild ledgers, by 1620, coffee houses generated enough tax to fund mosques and baths. Per fiscal records, their design evolved, some boasted courtyards with fountains, others had private rooms for elites. Per architectural plans, a 1610 record describes an Istanbul shop with velvet cushions for pushos, its walls painted with verses. Per traveller diaries, coffee's preparation was a craft, beans roasted daily, ground to powder, boiled in savors, and poured with care. Per culinary texts, each city added its flavor. Damascus favored clove, Baghdad leaned on rosewater. Per recipe books, the drink's ritual was communal, cups passed in circles, fostering bonds. Per social logs, storytellers weren't the only draw, musicians played lutes, their melodies blending with the crowd's hum. Per music records, A 1595 account notes a coffee house in Aleppo hosting a singer whose ballads drew 100 patrons nightly. These spaces were cultural hubs where art and ideas flourished, per chroniclers. Yet their freedom came at a cost. Spies lurked, reporting seditious talk to the palace, per imperial logs. A 1600 raid in Izmir saw patrons fined for mocking a vizier, per court records. Coffee houses persisted, their role as neutral grounds to vital, per city archives. They shaped Ottoman identity, a symbol of hospitality and wit, per poets like Bocchi, who called coffee the sober wine, per anthologies. The drink's global spread began here. Venetian traders carried beans to Europe by 1615, sparking cafes from London to Vienna, per trade manifests. Coffee's economic engine was relentless. Yemen's Mocha port exported 12,000 tons yearly by 1620. Per port logs, Ottoman farmers tried growing it, but Yemen's volcanic soil remained unmatched. Per agricultural records, coffee houses employed thousands from roasters to poets, their wages fueling local markets. Per guild accounts, the state's taxes on coffee built bridges and schools, tying the drink to the empire's growth. Per fiscal logs, yet the drink's social power worried rulers. Coffee houses were neutral, but not tame. Patrons whispered of reform, per spy reports. A 1615 incident saw a coffee house closed for hosting a poet who mocked the Sultan's court. Per court records, coffee's cultural role deepened. It sealed weddings, served at feasts, per family logs. Women's gatherings grew lavish. Harem elites used silver pots, their rituals shaping fashion. Per palace accounts, coffee's jolt changed work. Scribes wrote longer, traders bargained sharper, per merchant letters. Its cultural imprint was vast. Shadow plays lit by oil lamps told tales of love and war. Per theatre logs, the drink's ritual was social, cups shared in circles, fostering trust. Per social records, clerics persisted. A 1620 fatwa called coffee sinful, but patrons ignored it, their loyalty unshaken. Per mosque archives, coffee houses were economic hubs, employing servers, musicians and storytellers. Their wages tied to the drink's rise. Per ledgers, their design reflected wealth. Some had marble floors, others glass windows. Per architectural records, coffee's preparation was an art. Roasters trained for years, their fires stoked with precision. Per guild rules, the drink's spread reshaped daily life. Shops stayed open past midnight, their lamps glowing like beacons. Per Evliya Kalibi, its economic pull was vast. Coffee houses employed thousands, their taxes funding the empire's growth. Per fiscal records, the state's embrace was cautious. Spies watched, fearing rebellion. Per imperial logs, coffee's journey was a saga of trade, faith and defiance, a bean reshaping an empire. Its social power was its legacy, giving voice to the commoner. Per European travelers, a 1610 account describes a coffee house where a poet's verses sparked cheers from artisans. The drink's ritual was communal, cups passed in circles, fostering bonds. Per social logs, coffee houses hosted debates, games and performances, their energy unmatched. Per chroniclers, they were schools of thought where ideas crossed borders. Per diplomatic records, the drink's global journey began here, shaping cultures far beyond Istanbul. Per trade letters, as we savor the aroma of these coffee houses, where ideas brewed as fiercely as the drink, we sense a final shift in our orbit. The Ottoman world thrived on connection, but across the seas, another culture forged bonds through discipline and honor. What happens when armor becomes a warrior's soul? Its weight a testament to resolve. Let's orbit to feudal Japan, where samurai donned their yoroi not just for battle, but for a life of ritual and sacrifice. As we drift from the smoky coffee houses of Istanbul, where the clink of cups and the hum of debates wove a tapestry of Ottoman life, our orbit arcs across continents, to the mist-shrouded hills of feudal Japan, where a different kind of ritual shaped warriors' souls. In the 12th century, while Ottoman coffee houses buzzed with ideas, Japan's samurai crafted a legacy not of words but of steel, silk and honor. Their armor, known as yoroi, was more than protection. It was a symbol of lineage, duty and defiance, its weight a testament to a warrior's resolve. In this leg of our history orbit, we plunge into the world of the samurai, drawing from texts, like the Hike Monogatari and Warrior Diaries, to explore the intricate rituals of donning armor, each piece a step toward battle and eternity. Why did a samurai's armor carry the weight of his soul? And how did its creation reflect a life bound by Bushido? Picture a samurai, let's call him Tero of Kyoto, standing in a temple courtyard at dawn, the air sharp with the scent of cedar and incense. His armor, laid out on a lacquered stand, gleams under the rising sun, its plates polished to mirror the warrior's pride per samurai manuals. The yoroi wasn't just gear, it was a declaration, its colors and crests shouting Tero's clan to foes and allies alike per Hionera records. Crimson lacquer signaled courage, black spoke of loyalty, each hue chosen to echo ancestral deeds. Per clan chronicles, Tero's helmet, or kabuto, bore a crest shaped like a crescent moon, a nod to his family's ancient vow to protect Kyoto's lords per genealogical texts. Donning armor was no hasty act, it was a ritual, a sacred dance that took an hour. Per Bushido writings, Tero began with a purification, washing his hands in a temple stream, his prayers invoking ancestors' strength per ritual logs. The first layer, the shitigi, a padded silk tunic, hugged his frame, its softness belying the battle to come per armor inventories. Next came Nadu, a chest plate of iron scales laced with silk cords, its weight grounding Tero in his duty per crafting records. Each piece, from shoulder guards to thigh plates, was tied with precise knots. The Odo cords dyed in clan colors per artisan manuals. The process was deliberate, each step a meditation. Tero's breath steady as he aligned his spirit with the armor's purpose per Warrior Diaries. The kabuto, with its flared neck guard, was the final crown, its weight a reminder of the head he'd sworn to protect per Hike Monogatari. The armor's design was a marvel, blending beauty with function, its iron scales lacquered to resist rust per smithing texts. Tero's yoroi, weighing 30 kilograms, allowed swift movement on horseback, its plates overlapping like dragon scales per 12th century designs. Shoulder guards or sewed, shielded without hindering his bow, while shin guards or sun braced his legs for charges per battle accounts. Thigh plates, called hidate, and groin guards or kusazori protected vulnerable spots, their silk laces knotted to absorb blows per armor manuals. The obi belt, wide and sturdy, held a counter dagger, its blade a last resort per warrior codes. Tero's armor wasn't mass-produced, it was crafted by master smiths, each plate forged over weeks. Per artisan records, 1180 inventory lists a single yoroi costing as much as a village's harvest, its value tied to its maker's skill. The lacquer, made from tree sap, took months to dry, its glossy finish reflecting torchlight. Per crafting logs, silk cords dyed with indigo or madder were woven by women of the clan, their hands binding family honor into each knot per household records. The kabuto's crest, whether stag antlers or a sunburst, was a smith's signature per Heian texts. Tero's armor, passed down from his father, carried scars from battles like Ichi no Tone, where his clan fought for the Minamoto per chronicles. Maintenance was as sacred as donning. After battle, Tero cleaned each plate, polishing lacquer and retying cords per Warrior Diaries. 1190 manual details soaking silk in rice water to strengthen it, a task Tero performed with care, his hands steady as he honored his armor's spirit. The yoroi's weight was a constant, shaping a samurai's life from youth. Training began at 10, with boys like Tero carrying wooden replicas to build strength per dojo records. By 20, he could wear 30 kilograms for hours, his muscles honed by years of drills. Per training logs, the armor's design evolved. Hionera yoroi favored mounted archery, with wide sword for arrow defense, while Kamakura-era designs tightened for swordplay. Per military texts, Tero's bow, slung across his back, was as vital as his katana, its draw honed to pierce armor at 50 paces per archery manuals. The yoroi's plates, laced in patterns like adoshi, told stories, red for valor, blue for loyalty. Per clan records, each knot was a prayer, tying Tero to his ancestors per ritual texts. The armor's spiritual weight was as heavy as its iron. Bushido taught that a samurai's soul lived in his yoroi per philosophical writings. Tero's donning ritual was a vow, each piece a step toward readiness, not just for battle but for death per warrior codes. Removal was equally solemn. Terror knelt after battle, untying cords in reverse, offering thanks to ancestors per temple logs. The yoroi was stored on a stand, its silhouette a guardian in his home, per household records. A 1200 diary describes a samurai praying before his armor nightly, seeking guidance. A practice Tero followed. The armor's role extended beyond battle. It was worn in ceremonies, its presence commanding respect, per court records. At a 1185 Kyoto festival, Taro's yoroi, gleaming under torchlight, marked him as his clan's heir, per chronicles. The yoroi's craftsmanship was unmatched. Smiths trained decades, their forges sacred spaces, per artisan guilds. A single kabuto might take a year, its iron hammered thin, its crest carved with precision. Per crafting logs, silk cords woven by clan women were tested for strength per household texts. The yoroi's colors, chosen with care, reflected clan history. Taro's crimson echoing a victory at Dan no Yoro, per hike monogatari. The armor's upkeep was relentless, lacquer cracked in rain, cords frayed in battle. Per maintenance records, Taro's squire, young Kenji, learned to repair it, his hands learning knots as Tero once did. Per training logs, the yoroi's weight-shaped samurai culture, boys trained to carry it, their bodies molded by its demands per dojo accounts. 1170 record describes a samurai running miles in armor, his stamina legendary. The yoroi's design balanced beauty and terror, its plates curved to intimidate, per military texts. Taro's kabuto, with its menacing crest, was meant to strike fear, per battle chronicles. The armor's spiritual role was profound. A samurai without yoroi was incomplete. Per Bushido writings, Taro's prayers before battle invoked his armor's spirit, per ritual logs. The yoroi's legacy was personal, each dent a story, each knot a vow, per warrior diaries. A 1195 account describes a samurai bequeathing his armor to his son, its scars a testament to honor. Taro's yoroi, repaired after each battle, carried his father's legacy, per clan records. The armor's role in battle was critical. At Genpei wars, samurai-like terror charged with bows, their yoroi deflecting arrows, per chronicles. The yoroi's weight demanded skill. A clumsy samurai was a dead one, per training texts. Taro's drills included mock battles, his armor tested against wooden blades, per dojo logs. The yoroi's design evolved with warfare. Kamakura plates tightened for close combat, per military records. Taro's katana, paired with his yoroi, was a dance of precision, per sword manuals. The armor's spiritual weight was constant. A samurai's honor lived in its shine, per Bushido texts. Taro's yoroi, cleaned nightly, was a mirror of his soul, per warrior diaries. The armor's role in society was vast. It marked rank, its presence silencing crowds. Per court records, a 1200 festival saw samurai in yoroi parading before the shogun, their armor a symbol of loyalty. Per chronicles, the yoroi's craftsmanship was a clan's pride, smiths revered as artists, per guild logs. Taro's armor, forged by a master in Nara, was a treasure, per crafting records. The yoroi's upkeep was a family affair. Women wove cords, boys polished plates, per household texts. The armor's spiritual role was eternal. A samurai's death in yoroi was honorable, per warrior codes. Taro's prayers before battle sought a worthy end, his yoroi his shroud, per ritual logs. The yoroi's legacy was a clan's history, each piece a chapter, per genealogical records. As we stand with Tero his armor gleaming under Kyoto's dawn, we feel the weight of a journey that has carried us from Thornwick S, which fears, to Jerusalem. Crusades from Istanbul's coffee houses to Japan's sacred hills. The threads of history, from superstition to sacrifice, from debate to duty, weave a tapestry vast and vibrant. What binds these distant worlds where fear, faith, and honor-shaped lives across centuries? Let's orbit back, gathering these stories into a final reflection, where the past's echoes resonate with our own. As we stand with Tero of Kyoto, his crimson yoroi gleaming under the dawn's first light, the weight of his armor anchoring him to a legacy of honor, we pause to reflect on the vast orbit we've traveled together. From the fog-draped lanes of Thornwick, where a stray dog or a whispered prayer could brand you a sorcerer, to the sun-scorched sands of Jerusalem, where Templars and Hospitallers forged faith into steel, we've spiraled through centuries and continents, we lingered in the smoky coffeehouses of Istanbul, where a humble bean brewed revolutions of thought, and crossed seas to Japan, where samurai armor wove duty into every knot and plate. This journey, drawn from dusty chronicles like the Malleus Maleficarum, William of Tis accounts, Evliya Çelebi's travels, and the Haik Monogatari, has been a tapestry of human fears, dreams, and triumphs. What binds these distant worlds where superstition, sacrifice, and society shape lives in ways that echo even today? Picture yourself back in Thornwick, 14th century England, where a freckle or a well-timed storm could doom you as a witch, the air thick with suspicion. That fear of the unknown, rooted in trial records and papal decrees, feels distant. Yet isn't it familiar? Today's whispers on social media, where a single post can spark a frenzy, mirror those medieval accusations, reminding us how quickly trust can fray. Now, imagine riding with Brother Simon, his Templar mantle snapping in the desert wind, his life a balance of prayer and peril. Per 12th century ledgers, his discipline, forged in the rule of the Templars, speaks to a universal truth. Dedication to a cause transcends time, whether it's a knight's vow or a modern pursuit of purpose. The Hospitallers and Teutonic Knights, with their black and white crosses, carried this further, blending healing with conquest, their castles like Belvoir and Marienburg standing as testaments to resilience. Per architectural plans, don't we still build our own fortresses, physical or mental, to protect what matters most? Shift to Istanbul's coffee houses, where Mustafa the tanner and Selim the trader debated over steaming cups, their voices rising above the clatter of tavla dice. Per Evliya Çelebi's diaries, those smoky rooms where ideas clashed and bonds formed, feel like ancestors to our cafes and forums, places where strangers become allies over shared passions. And in Japan, Taro's ritual of donning his yoroi, each not a prayer, per Bushido texts, mirrors the care we take in crafting our identities, whether through art, work, or belief. These stories, separated by oceans and eras, are stitched by a common thread: humanity's drive to find meaning in chaos, to build order from fear, and to connect across divides. The Templars' red cross, the coffeehouse's flickering lamps, the samurai's lacquer plates, each was a symbol of something greater, a spark of purpose in a world of uncertainty. This orbit through history reveals not just the past's strangeness, but its familiarity the way. Fear-fueled witch hunts in Thornwick echoes in our rush to judge. The Templars' banking genius finds kin in our digital economies. The coffeehouse's debates live on in our endless online arguments, and the samurai's honor resonates in our quest for integrity. These aren't just tales from dusty tomes, they're mirrors, reflecting who we were and who we are. So, why does this matter? Because history isn't a dead thing, it's alive, pulsing in every choice we make, every story we tell. The 1233 decree that branded animals as demons, the 1129 bull that freed Templars from kings, the 1554 opening of Istanbul's first coffeehouse, the 1180 crafting of Taro's yoroi. These moments, grounded in real records, shaped the world we inherited. They remind us that our fears, our faiths, our rituals are part of a longer thread, one we're still weaving. As we close this orbit, think about this. What's your armor, your coffeehouse, your cross? What do you carry to face your battles, to spark your ideas, to honor your roots? History Orbit isn't just a journey through the past, it's a call to see your place in its arc. We've uncovered 15 signs that doomed a villager, the rise of warrior monks, the brew that shook an empire, and the armor that defined a warrior's soul. But this is just the beginning. The past is vast, its stories endless, from forgotten heroes to hidden rituals, waiting to be explored. If this journey stirred your curiosity, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and join us for the next orbit. Drop a comment, what shocked you most? A witch's freckle, a Templar's vault, a coffeehouse debate, or a samurai's knot? Share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation brewing. History Orbit isn't a one-way trip, it's a cycle, and we're ready to spiral deeper into the past's mysteries with you. Until our next orbit, keep chasing the threads that tie us to time, because every story, like every cup of coffee, holds a spark of something eternal.